Hello, thank you for joining us again at S&P Work Lab for another Be the Change interview. Today we have community advocate Myron Benett. Thank you so much for coming and interviewing with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we can fall right into the first question. I know that you are aware of the racial tension in our country right now. What are your thoughts on the racial divide?
Okay. Well, you know, I'm a little older than probably most people. And I can actually remember times like this when I was growing up. I grew up in the 60s. The 60s were very tumultuous times throughout the country, and specifically in Cleveland. We had the Glenville riots, we had the Huff riots. I can remember National Guardsmen being on the corner of my street. I can remember marches through our neighborhood. And so I think that if you live long enough, you see the same thing over and over again. And I think it's probably shocking for a lot of people who haven't lived through this before. But for me, it just seems like we've not moved very far from the 60s.
Okay. Now, what do you think that we can do to get America back on track, or to get America on track to being a better America? And how do you think that, the everyday person, what do you think that they can do to help?
Well, I think one thing that has to happen is that we have to resist otherizing people. And so I think when we look at what's happened over the last several years, there's always a group that we've always tended to otherize. And when I grew up, which was really interesting, it was, there were cowboys and Indians on television. So the Indians were always otherized. They were savages. They were, people who didn't have the same culture and civilization as Americans did. And I think there's this whole thought that America is different, that Americans are different, and that stuff like this doesn't happen in America, it happens in other places. And I think we really have to recognize, number one, that it's happening. And this is not an anomaly. This is something that rears its ugly head every so many years. And so that's I think, first facing what America really is, and then saying we will not tolerate some of these things. We will not allow some of these things to continue to happen over and over and over again. And I think we have active amnesia. We forget that things haven't moved that far and that we have a distance to go.
Wow.
And we have to constantly work on it. We have to constantly be vigilant. We shouldn't have to rally the troops when there's an election. This should be every day, all the time. When you think of other populations that have thrived in this America, they have constantly kept pressure on businesses. They've kept pressure on educational systems, or the systems, period, whether it's the political system, the education system, the business system. I think in order to make change, at least for people of color, we have to constantly keep the pressure on. For other people, I think they have to become educated about the fact that this is the norm for us. When we talk about racial unrest and disparities, this has become the norm for us. And so sometimes people have to feel a little uncomfortable with knowing that things aren't all hunky-dory and great and American and wonderful, and this whole thing about this is the land of opportunity. It is for some and not for others. I think that because there are people like yourself and like me and a couple of other people that folks can always point to and say, look, see, they've done it, they've made it. That's been against so many odds. And we may not have personally experienced that, but know that there are a lot of people that do. And so I think we really have to start looking at balancing opportunity, whether it's educational opportunity. The COVID, coronavirus has really uncovered the disparity in education. Kids in some cities just opened their laptops and started learning. Other kids didn't even have books. So there just has to be some leveling of the playing field.
Right. So I want to also ask you, what are you doing in your everyday life? What are you doing to impact change daily in your community as an activist?
So, for many years, I've thought that we really need to start a lot at a much younger age of making people responsible for their communities. And so it's when I grew up, it was you were part of a family and you knew your role and your responsibility in the family. And that kind of migrated out into your community. And so things like respect your elders and if you saw someone who had a need, like an older person, you would open the door for them.
Right.
I think we really need to kind of go back to those kinds of things. And so what I want to do is I want to work with young people, young men, young boys, and teach them what it is or engage them in a way that they understand the value of their community. And that they want to contribute to their community when we get older. They get excited about spending time in their own communities and helping in their own communities. And then I want to make certain that those young men or those young boys are really shepherded through the rest of their lives. So if we start with young boys in the second grade, we shouldn't just drop them in the second grade. We need to be there when they're in the third grade and the fourth grade, all the way through adulthood, because they've got to also see role models doing the things that we want them to do. If you want children to do things, you have to role model it for them. You can't tell kids the old thing of do as I say and not as you see. You really have to be that role model. You have to be that change. I think there was a song, "Be the change that you want," to exist in your community. I'm paraphrasing it, but that's the kind of thing that I really want to work with. I really want to work with young people, helping them understand their roles and responsibility in their community.
Well, they most certainly are our future, so it's very important that we, commit to giving them the time needed to be able to grow into, advocates such as yourself. So thank you so much for being a part of our interview. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here. Thank you guys for tuning in again. And remember that you too can be the change.